Thank you for participating in another church school session in Grace United Methodist Church in Winfield, Kansas. We're on a journey together as I share what I learned from the faith community of the Indian community, as I had the privilege of working with them for 8 years. As I walked through the journey of faith with the Indians, there was something that provided the context for every experience I had with them. And I couldn't put my finger on it. When we were on retreat together, I became more and more convinced that it had something to do with their understanding of the earth and all of its creatures, one of which were human creatures. I grew up with an appreciation of nature, but the Indian relationship was deeper than appreciation. Their attitude towards the earth was one of awe, one of reverence for Mother Earth. They have an understanding of Mother Earth that I learned, and that is the phrase I coined, that creation is cooperation. Mother Earth and all of its creatures represent a vital balance which is to be honored and protected. Steve Current, who tapes these videos weekly for us, reminded me recently of something that I had access to but had not looked at for a long time, and that was the words that Chief Dan George wrote in 1972. He was the leader of the Tsleil-Waututh Nation, and these are his words, and I quote, "My father loved the earth and all of its creatures. The earth was his second mother. The earth and everything in it contained was a gift. And the only way to thank the Great Spirit was to use the Great Spirit's gifts with respect. I remember as a little boy fishing with him up Indian River, and I can still see him as the sun rose above the mountaintop in the early morning. I can see him by the water's edge with his arms raised above his head when he softly moaned, 'Thank you, thank you.' It left a deep impression on my young mind, and I shall never forget the disappointment when once he caught me gasping for fish, just for the fun of it. 'My son,' he said, 'the Great Spirit gave you these fish to be your brothers, to feed you when you are hungry. You must respect them. You must not kill them just for the fun of it.'" Continuing, Dan George wrote, "It's hard for me to understand a culture that attacks nature and abuses her, blotting out nature with the building of cities, stripping the hills bare, leaving ugly wounds on the face of mountains, throwing poison in the waters, indifferent to the life that he kills there, choking the air with deadly fumes, tearing things from the bosom of Mother Earth as if she were a monster. Man must fully love, or he will become the lowest of the animals. Man must love all of creation, or he will love none of it." End of quote. These words of Chief George is the all I experienced with the faith community within the Indian community. This is why they celebrated 3 weeks ago when, after a 100-year-long protest, the decision has been made to demolish a dam on a tributary in Northern California that was constructed for hydroelectric power, but it also prevented the salmon run on the river. New fish ladders would cost more than the demolition of the dam that was oftentimes producing no power and produced less than 2% of the power needed for the company who owned it. This is the reason why Indians protested the pipeline construction through the river in the Dakotas. This is the reason my Indian friends always went outside before we ate breakfast. Why? To commune with Mother Earth and all of its creatures, for they believe maintaining the vital balance of creation as cooperation is in human hands. When I finally absorbed this incredible way of life, it was like a self-administered slap in the face as I realized that the Indians knew that the translation of the Indigenous story about the human being's relationship to all of creation, and the English translations read that humans have dominion over creation. The Indians knew before they were ever taught that that was wrong. Because when you look at the Hebrew word, it didn't mean in charge of, to destroy, to do whatever you wanted to do with it. That's the meaning of dominion. But the word really means to care for. Human beings have the responsibility of caring for all of creation. For creation is cooperation, and that vital balance of all of its creatures must be maintained. And that's your responsibility and my responsibility. That's what I learned from the Indians. They didn't set me down to teach me that creation is cooperation. I lived with them and discovered this wisdom. There's a lot to think about, and following are some questions that might help us on our journey of thinking and sharing with each other. First of all, what part of the story of Chief George touches you the most deeply? Secondly, what are our experiences of participating in daily rituals, ignoring that creation is cooperation? And finally, do you consider the issues raised by the Indian community as issues of faith, as do the Indian community? Thank you for participating.